Hello there, boxing fans around the world. Welcome once again to another episode on Talking Fight, featuring Christian from the Friday night panel and his ongoing exploration of the road to the Olympics if you're a boxer. So, Christian, what do you have lined up for us today?
Well, Graham, the rapidly devolving situation in Japan is always kind of where we've been starting this off, and today is no different. So, a COVID-19 cluster at a Japanese hotel where dozens of Brazilian Olympic team members are staying has raised new concerns about infections at the Tokyo Games, as the host city recorded its highest number of new cases in 6 months.
Wow.
So, just over a week before the opening ceremonies, the spreading infection highlights the risks of staging the world's biggest sporting event during a pandemic. That's even without spectators being in the seats. So far, 7 staffs at the hotel in Hamamatsu City, southwest of Tokyo, have tested positive for coronavirus, according to city officials. But a 31-strong Brazilian Olympic delegation are in a quote-unquote bubble in the hotel and separated from other guests, and thus far have not had any positive tests come back as a result of this particular cluster. The Russians' women rugby sevens team were also in isolation after one of their masseurs tested positive for COVID-19, according to the RIA news agency out of Moscow, as was part of the South Africa's men's rugby team after a case was found on their inbound flight into Tokyo. Highly contagious virus variants have fueled the latest wave of infections, and failure to vaccinate Japanese people faster has left the local population vulnerable. Now, in Tokyo, where a state of emergency has been imposed until after the games end on the 8th of August, they recorded 1,149 new cases as of Wednesday, or this morning, which is the highest that they've had since the 22nd of January. Now, officials are imposing what they're calling Olympic bubbles in an effort to keep the COVID-19, at bay here. But medical experts are worried that they may not be completely airtight as movement of staff between not necessarily the athletes, but the staff that all the infrastructure that makes all this work and help service the games can create opportunities for infections and basically leak points for these bubbles. International Olympic Committee President Thomas Bach praised organizers and the Japanese people for staging the event in midst of a pandemic, as if they had any choice. Thomas Bach being the only one with the authority to actually cancel these games. Okay. Now, Bach told reporters after a meeting with Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga that these will be a historic Olympic Games for the way how the Japanese people overcame so many challenges in the last couple of years. Now, when Japan was awarded these games back in 2013, they were expected to be a celebration of recovery from a deadly earthquake, tsunami, and then nuclear accident all taking place in 2011. They had then hoped that these rescheduled games would at least help mark a global victory over the coronavirus. But many countries are now struggling with new surges of the infection with the new Delta and Lambda variants. So many of the Olympic delegations are already in Japan, and as you hear, several athletes have tested positive upon arrival. Another one, the refugee Olympic team, has delayed its travel to Japan after one of the team officials tested positive in Qatar, according to the IOC. 21 members of South Africa's rugby team, as mentioned, are in isolation after they are believed to have been in close contact with a case on their inbound flight. Now, that's according to spokesperson from Kagoshima City, where they were expected to be hosted in the run-up to the games. They were due to stay in that city from Wednesday, but that plan has been halted until further advice from health authorities, according to city official Tsuyoshi Kajihara. Global interest in the Tokyo Games as a whole has been muted, according to an Ipsos poll of 28 countries, amid concern over COVID-19 in Japan and the withdrawal of several high-priority athletes, or high-profile athletes, I should say here. Now, the poll released on Tuesday found that an average of 46% interest in the Games, and that 78% of the people of Japan were against the Games going forward. Among those not competing in Japan are going to be former world number 1 golfer Adam Scott, who questioned whether holding the Tokyo Olympics was a responsible decision given the current climate. Now, Switzerland's Roger Federer became the latest big name to withdraw. The 20-time tennis Grand Slam champion saying Tuesday that he had picked up a knee injury during the grass court season. However, most people and most of the chatter has been at this point basically saying that this is his way of stepping away from the games without having to make a political statement of it. Okay. Now, That's the generally devolving situation in Japan. But let's look on to brighter things. We know these games are going forward because Thomas Bach is praising everyone who's involved. And again, he is the only one with the authority to actually call this off. And he has said it's not happening. So we're going to keep moving forward with this. So as we're just a little over a week out of the games now, we're going to start taking a look each day now at a couple of different weight classes and who's going to be, who's currently heavily favored and who's in contention for a medal here. And I'm going to apologize in advance right now to our friends across the pond. I cannot put the Brits as heavily favored for every one of these. So, Carl, apologies in advance. But today we're going to take a look at the top of the food chain, the guys at the very front of the buffet line, the super heavyweights and the heavyweights. So starting off with the heavyweights, heavily favored for this one, we've got Bakoder Jalalov out of Uzbekistan and Richard Torres Jr. from the U.S. So Jalalov is a resounding favorite in this category as he's undefeated as a professional with 8 wins, with 8 wins since going pro, all by knockout. The southpaw, who is 6'7" tall, has a lot to like about him here. Now, beyond the height here, his last recorded loss was actually a split decision back in 2017 to Kemshibek Kunkabayev in Germany. And then before that, in 2016, a loss to world title contender Joe Joyce. So we still get the Brits in there. Beyond all this, though, Jalalev has met Richard Torres Jr. in the past and knocked him out in September of 2019. And Torres at the time was viewed as one of, if not the best in the world in that weight division. Now, Torres himself has had probably the most excitement around him for a super heavyweight in the United States since Tyrell Biggs and Riddick Bowe. As Torres has made more inroads and as an amateur, more than the 2008 bronze medalist Deontay Wilder. Yet, despite his impressive slew of wins, many by way of knockout, the big question is what is going to happen if and when he does come up against Jalalov again. As you know, Jalalov managed to take away some of the mystique surrounding Torres going into these games. Now, still very much in the race here, but if not necessarily at the top of the pile, we've got France's Murad Aliyev and Fraser Clark out of Great Britain. Now, Aliyev is a big puncher who, when facing outmatched competition, shows traits of Arthur Beterbiev, which is to say a bit of a finesse fighter. But when facing tough competition, he does know how to win ugly as well, which is a skill unto itself. Now, the French have been investing heavily into their boxing program over the last few years and have been showing major developments. In 2016, Tony Yoka of France took home the gold medal in this category. And even though Aliyev might not win this one, again, Jalalov is pretty heavily favored in this. I wouldn't be surprised to see him hanging a medal around his neck come the end of this one. Now, Clark himself, Fraser Clark is, he's well-rounded, if not the most interesting fighter to watch. And, it's hard not to compare him a bit to Joe Joyce, as he is really solid in his fundamentals and can push his opponents onto the back foot pretty easily as well. In the past 2 Olympics, the UK have done pretty well with Anthony Joshua taking gold in 2012 and Joe Joyce with a silver. So I wouldn't be surprised again to see Clark with a medal around his neck, though I have a sneaking suspicion we might be looking at bronze for Clark, unless something pretty astounding happens. Moving on, though, from the super heavyweights, moving back in the buffet line a little bit here, we've got the heavyweights. Now, you guys will be well familiar with hearing me butcher the name Muslim Himagomadov, and he is heavily favored here in this one as well. And he's going to be fighting for the Russian Olympic Committee. Remember, not for Russia, but for the Olympic Committee. And other also likewise heavily favored in this particular weight category, we're looking at Julio Cesar La Cruz out of Cuba. Now, Himagomadov is a well-rounded, solid fighter in what is shaping up to be one of the more interesting weight classes of these games. At roughly 6'5" and 24 years old, Himagomadov is a straight punch machine. And, he's got good speed and bounce for a guy his size as well. And it also helps he hasn't lost a bout since 2017, which was to Bekatimur Melikuziev, better known as Bek the Bully, as well as a loss to Joseph Ward a little prior to that in the same year. Now, Julio Cesar La Cruz is a fighter that, if you like watching defensive fighters and counterpunching here, he's going to be the one that you're going to want to keep a close eye on here. Now, admittedly, Khalil Ko, aka the Big Stepa, did announce his arrival into the boxing world by knocking him out in 2018 at the Chemistry Cup. That being said, La Cruz is going to be tough to beat. And he also may just be the fastest guy in this division, and probably also one of the ones with the most experience. So if you like counterpunching and you like the defensive game, this is going to be the guy to watch. Still very much in the hunt here, if not at the top of it. We're looking at Vasily Levitt out of Kazakhstan and Radoslav Pantelev from Bulgaria. Now, Levitt is a 2016 silver medalist, and also known as the man who throws every punch with bad intentions and never takes a backward step. Now, he'll be looking to make the 2020 Olympics a memorable one, as Levitt's style is pretty straightforward, and it's just pressure, pressure, pressure with subtle feints as he looks to wear you down with power and, looks to make you question your conditioning and abilities here. Pantelev is not totally dissimilar here. He's got kind of a mauling style, and again, he's very straightforward. His entire thing is be stronger than your opponent and put just a ton of pressure on them right from the word go. Pantelev does have a style, but in a very raw sense, you could kind of compare him to Murat Gassiev, as he relies heavily on his power to change the momentum of fights and never backs down. So he will have to have something of a career-defining tournament in order to medal, but if he's managed right, he's going to be a solid pro. So really the question comes, what if one of these guys comes up against one of our top two here, where we're talking more in terms of speed and finesse, whereas Pantelev and Levitt, it's very much you're going to see a lot of clinches. You're going to see, when you do see a clinch, you're going to see a lot of leaning and a lot of pressure, trying to use that weight to kind of wear down their opponents. So depending on how the draws go in this category, we should see some either very interesting fights or some rather boring fights, if I'm being quite honest. If we just see, basically a hugging fest here with these guys trying to wear each other down. Hopefully it's not what we're seeing here. Sorry, I'm just taking a quick look at some of the questions we've got coming in on the side here. Pros in the Olympics. Okay, well, pros in the Olympics is the question that we have. So, and Keyshawn Davis being mentioned in here. Again, we're going to get into some of those other weight classes a little later on here as we get closer to the games. We'll mention Keyshawn probably by name there. But being pro isn't necessarily, Himagomadov, again, has gone pro. A couple of these guys have gone pro already. There's no real benefit, though. And there's no, oh, careful, this guy's a pro coming into this. Because as great as knockouts are in boxing, and we all love a knockout. We all tune in Sunday afternoons to see the knockout of the week with Mike Orr and Cedric Ben. Knockouts don't always win amateur bouts. In Olympic boxing, far more frequently you're going to see these decided by the judges, and you're going to see it decided by points. And that new judging system where we're taking 5 judges instead of 3, and the computers are randomly selecting which of those scores are going to go forward. We've also got the changes in judging where we're seeing the announcement of the points at the end of each round as opposed to at the end of the bout. So a few changes on the go, but it's points, 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 points. So speed takes you a long way in this, a lot farther than, because you're only getting points for landing punches in the right space, in the right spots. We're looking front and sides of the head. We're looking front and side of the body. We're not looking at anything behind the head, obviously. So legal punches is all we're looking for. Whereas it's a little bit more subjective in the pro game, where we have categories like ring generalmanship and things like that. Who's controlling the pace of the fight is going to help you on your scorecard. Hitting extra hard is going to get you more points on the scorecard. Staggering your opponent, dropping your opponent to the mat is going to get you more points on the scorecard. None of these things count in amateur bouts. So when it comes down to the actual Olympic game, speed is the name of the game, and landing those legal shots is really what's going to take you the farthest in this. So some of these guys who are quick counter punchers, you may see them doing a lot better than you might expect from a guy who's just a straight punch machine. Now, if a guy like Himagomadov gets a hold of you, you're in big trouble. But if you can keep away from him or get in real close where he has a hard time throwing, you could change the fight that way. Because again, it's the scoring is so different. There's no real benefit to the pros, and this is why we haven't seen the pros do particularly well coming into this. in the last couple of Olympics where they have been allowed to train. And this is also why we see a lot of things going on, like Yumar Marshall, for example, out of the Philippines, where his coaches very much wanted him out of the U.S. and back training with the team in, I believe their training camp was in Thailand at the time, as opposed to training with Eddie Roach in Vegas, because they say you got to stop training pro and you need to be sitting back with us and focusing on Olympic style boxing and training for Olympic style boxing. The training regiments are different as well as the overall. I'm starting to ramble here, Graham, I know, but there's no real benefit to the pros themselves, or no real advantage that they have as a pro going into a tournament like this over people who have been training and attending tournaments like this throughout the year. And that's all I'll say on that for now. Taking a look around the rings, Graham, that's what we've got. Tomorrow, we're going to move into the next couple of weight categories and the next couple after that. I am away tomorrow, but I will be sending you some information on that. You can carry my words onward to the great viewing public of Talkin' Fight.
Thanks very much, Christian. Appreciate that. Out of curiosity, I can't remember if we were going to keep track of your predictions in each weight class as we go along. It would be fun to have like a chart of Christian's predictions.
Well, we really haven't. We really, well, Team Great Britain will dominate. Well, again, Fraser Clark's got a fighting chance. He's definitely in there, and of course, with Great Britain, we're going to see big things from the McCormicks, and Ben Whitaker is one of the top rated. Again, as we get into those other weight classes, we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But yeah, the Brits are slated to do well. Both the men and the women on Great Britain. I don't think there's anyone who's not in with at least a fighting chance.
So are the Uzbeks, but I'm just curious. Are we going to keep track of Christian's predictions?
We haven't put out any actual predictions. We've talked again. We're talking in terms of who's highly rated at this point, but I haven't put out because I haven't seen the actual draw cards yet. So we can't say, this is who's going to be gold right from the word go. As we start seeing these, I'm happy to throw my opinions, about individual fights as we get closer to it. But right now, we're just going to focus on who's favored at this point.
Okay. All right. I'll let you get away with that.
We still got a week.
Lots of time. Thanks very much for the update, Christian. I appreciate it very much. Thanks very much for your input, Ray. I appreciate it very much. Yeah, I fully believe the Cubans will come. Oh, as usual, China's interesting. And Ukraine, apparently, according to Ray, has a good delegation coming, as well as the Kazakhs. So interesting. So we'll see how it goes as we move forward. I'm looking forward to your rankings or ratings. Tomorrow. Not tomorrow. Those will be my ratings. So thanks very much, Christian. Appreciate it very much. And thanks very much, listenership and viewership, for chiming in. And we'll see you tomorrow. Friday.
Talk soon.